It's a wonderful pleasure to be here today. I've been asked to speak about the business of solving poverty and hunger. In 2008, I was engaged by a large multinational that wanted to enter Nigeria. They wanted to introduce nutritious products, and so as a consultant, I traveled the length and breadth of Nigeria. I was shocked at what I learned. These statistics might appear normal and genuine, but the average Nigerian does not realize the depth of the hunger challenge we face. 30% of our children are stunted. And when they are stunted, this affects their brain development, which means that they cannot excel in their educational pursuits, they cannot gain employment, and they cannot live full and meaningful lives. 40 to 60% of our fruits and vegetables go to waste. And even though 60% of our population works in agriculture, we import 90% of the processed food we consume. We as a nation are facing a crisis of hunger and poverty, which affects our labor force, leading to up to 17% wage losses. And we lose 1.5 billion every year because we do not provide micronutrients to our children. Now, we also recognize that with the crisis in northern Nigeria, 4.7 million people are food insecure. Nigeria is literally draining our workforce and killing our future. Now, most of the reasons for these challenges are man-made. We have created them through corruption, through our inability to invest in fighting moderate malnutrition, through the neglect of our agriculture sector, which has resulted in low yields and waste, as well as our inability to invest in local processing. The sad reality is that even though our country stipulates that all manufacturers of oil, flour, sugar, and salt should fortify with vitamin A and iodine, only 2% of some of our companies do so. In fact, we have neglected the issue of hunger and poverty in our country. Why should our children suffer because of the changes that we have refused to make? I love this quote by Kofi Annan, which essentially says that a man is not free if he's hungry, because on a daily basis, he's focused on his next meal. Now, we see these children every day. We see them in traffic. We see them in our villages. We see them in our communities. They are nieces and nephews. Aisha in Gombe, Shegu in urban Lagos, Uche in Onitsha. They are separated from our children only because of opportunity and circumstance. But each of these individuals deserve to live full and meaningful lives. As someone who was really challenged to do more myself, I decided to start a number of companies with my husband, focused on addressing hunger and poverty. The first one is Ace Foods. Now, Ace Foods demonstrates the impact you can make when you source locally. We currently work with 10,000 farmers in northern Nigeria, providing them with microfinance, training, and technology support. Through that, we've empowered them, and also the transporters who carry the produce, our own company that provides a warm meal and health insurance to staff, all the women who distribute our products, and then we've also empowered the retailers at the back end, from farm to fork. The sad reality is that most manufacturing companies in Nigeria do not source locally and do not have any incentives to source locally. In fact, all they really use are the human beings who package the imported products that we bring into our country, neglecting the lives of our farmers who deserve access to better livelihoods for their children. Through our work, we've also invested in fighting moderate malnutrition, and we provide complementary food, soya maize, fortified with vitamins and minerals. Now, as a classic example of the impact we've made is that a few years ago, I visited an IDP camp in Abuja and met a young baby, Fatima. Fatima's family had been affected by Boko Haram. They traveled from Borno and ended up in the IDP camp outside Abuja. Fatima weighed 5 kg. She was 7 months old. 50% of the birth weight that she should have. A simple bout of diarrhea or fever would have killed Fatima. There are many Fatimas everywhere. By eating our soya maize, Fatima's life was transformed. The sad reality is, even though we can provide soya maize in Nigeria, we still import tremendous amounts of food from the World Food Program, supporting farmers in other nations when we should be feeding our people with the food grown in our country. Through the Nigerian Dairy Development Program, we're putting farmers into clusters in partnership with Friesland Campina and LNZ. And this demonstrates what private sector-led development can achieve. These two companies have said, instead of importing all the milk that we consume in this country, we're going to source milk from Fulani for our herdsmen. We're providing training to the farmers. We're giving them support with artificial insemination, access to feed and fodder, and empowering the women, because the women actually control the sale of milk, and the men own the cows. This is not only reducing the conflict between some communities in Oyo State in terms of settling our Fulani herdsmen, but it's ensuring that we can displace the imports of milk and empower our generation with nutritious food. Beyond dairy, we're also working in a range of areas transforming value chains. Now, one of the biggest hindrances to our agricultural sector is the fact that our yields are too low in Nigeria, and we cannot compete with globally sourced food. So we're introducing seed systems in yam and cassava, ensuring that we can triple or quadruple the yields that our farmers generate and have enough food for our people to eat. Beyond access to yields and technology, we're also providing microfinance through our sister company, Sahel Capital Agribusiness Managers, which manages the fund for financing agriculture. Financing remains a key challenge, and organizations such as Sahel are providing private equity to agro-processing companies across the country. Now, these are just examples of what you can do if you want to solve problems. And beyond my own personal engagement, there are lots of companies doing their own parts. We have Farm Crowdy that's providing opportunities to link individuals to farm produce. We have Chowberry that's actually using technology to ensure that expiring food gets into the hands of those who need it at much reduced rates. And Hello Tractor, that's really the Uber of tractors in Nigeria, providing low-cost tractors to farmers, ensuring that we have mechanization and increased yields. All of these interventions demonstrate that there's success stories in our country, but most of them are operating at very small scales. Union Bank has also been supporting Leap Africa through our Social Innovators program over the last 5 years, ensuring that young people who have innovative ideas to solve hunger or poverty are empowered to do so. Safer Mom and On Fire are just two examples of innovative inventions that young people have introduced into Nigeria to transform the lives of people and ensure that we can have food for our people. Now, of all these initiatives, we've seen the statistics. By 2050, Nigeria is going to have 450 million people. How are we going to feed them if we cannot feed the 180 that we have today? It's going to take courage, it's going to take vision, and it's going to take innovation at scale. And that is required from every single individual sitting here. When we think about the two SDG goals associated with poverty and hunger, SDG Goal 1 says that we must solve poverty for all. It means that we need to get everybody out of poverty. And that requires a trickle-down effect, that even if our economy grows, we have to ensure that no one is left behind. The hunger goal says that we have to unlock the opportunities in our agribusiness sector and ensure that we provide available, affordable food for every Nigerian. Now, these goals sound daunting, but with a vision, we can accomplish them. I actually really like the 2016 Agriculture Sector and Food Security Nutrition Strategy that the Nigerian government and the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, working with GAIN and FAO, have come up with. And I think it gives us a good blueprint to think about. Union Bank has stipulated 100 billion over the next 100 years to address some of these SDG goals. When you look at this chart, you can see a few examples of what we can use that money for. The need to address the issue of post-harvest losses means that we have to invest in processing. They've estimated 20 billion naira required for that, and they have an elaborate program that they've developed. Similarly, for production, increasing the yield so that we have more affordable and available food. Changing behavior so that we can address some of the myths. For example, Kano grows most of the cowpea we consume in this country. And we call it beans in Lagos, ewa, here. But they do not eat it as much in Kano. That's just one example of saying, what can we do to create innovative food for our people so that those who are growing the food are also eating the nutritious food across the country. Similarly, only 17% of our women currently breastfeed their babies, relative to 50% in other parts of the world. Changing our mindsets and creating awareness of the need to breastfeed our babies is critical to addressing the challenges around malnutrition. So I am suggesting that we think about some of the plans that are already in place and we empower our citizens to rise up and provide food for themselves. When I consider the future that we as Nigerians need to build for ourselves, I strongly believe we need to leave a legacy of vision and action for future generations. This requires that everyone in the private sector devote finances, their treasure, their time, and their resources to charting a course for the future. It means that we're going to have to leave our egos and logos at the door. Even the banks sitting in this room can partner with Union Bank to change this country. And realizing that it doesn't matter whose brand is at the front. What matters is the impact for future generations. Now, I would like to end with this quote that I love by Nelson Mandela, which says, "Overcoming poverty is not a task of charity. It's an act of injustice. Like slavery and apartheid, poverty is not natural. It's man-made. And it can be overcome and eradicated by actions of human beings. Sometimes it falls on a generation to be great. You can be the great generation. I believe we can be the great generation." The story of the Aishas, the Sheguns, the Uches, young children who are born into poverty and can never achieve their highest potential should not be told 100 years from now. Our children, our grandchildren will hold us accountable for what we did not do to transform this country. It's within our grasp. The strategies are there. The organizations that are doing it are already there. They need to scale. They need your help. My favorite quote says, "If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others." Union Bank wants to go far. They've called us together to do it together. And we need everybody here to commit to solving hunger and poverty in our lifetime. Thank you very much.